Elegy of the Azure Sea. Chapter 1, A Fleeting Encounter Amid Shipwreck. A full moon hung high, silver light piercing the thick sea fog to spill pale frost over the black waves. The misty sea was unnervingly quiet that night. Even the perennial howling winds fell silent, leaving only the soft crash of tides against reefs, eerily gentle. Beneath the dark waters, a flash of silver-blue light darted past. Lerei hovered in the abyssal gloom, her long hair drifting with the currents, her fair skin translucent in the faint deep-sea glow. Her slender tail swayed gently, layers of silver-blue scales shimmering with tiny pearlescent light, like a fallen star resting on the ocean floor. It was her kin's hunting night. Several figures lurked in the distant undercurrents, lying in wait for their prey. Their songs lingered on the verge of release, ethereal and bewitching, ready to ensnare every living thing on the sea. Lerei had no wish to join. For 1,000 years, she had stood apart from her kin's hunts, silently witnessing life and death unfold. She abhorred slaughter and the despair of fading souls, preferring to drift at the boundary of sea and sky, gazing at mortal ship lights and distant flames. But tonight, the sea bore an unusual stir. A heavy hull cut through the fog. A grand royal frigate parted the calm waves, its black hull carved with exquisite royal crests, tall sails billowing in the wind. Even amid the misty perilous seas, it sailed steady and resolute, bearing the unique fortitude and fearlessness of humanity. This was a British Royal Exploration warship, dispatched to traverse the foggy seas and chart new continents. It carried sailors, physicians, scholars, and a young nobleman traveling abroad. Her kin's song rang out first. Ethereal, bewitching melodies pierced the waves, coiling around the entire vessel. Sailors tending sails and checking courses froze mid-movement, clarity fading from their eyes, replaced by dazed emptiness. Their feet moved unconsciously toward the gunwale, beyond their control. It was the innate beguiling power of sirens, a bloodline gift no mortal could resist. As the sailors prepared to hurl themselves into the icy depths, doomed to perish en masse, Lerei's fingers tightened sharply. An unbidden surge of compassion stirred her heart, and she instinctively channeled her spiritual power, sending a pure, faint sound wave rippling outward, silently counteracting her kin's bewitching melody. The eerie sea song faltered abruptly, its beguiling power dissipating by half. The dazed sailors jolted back to their senses, staring at one another in bewilderment, heads heavy with dizziness, unaware they had narrowly escaped annihilation. They steadied themselves, filled with renewed awe and terror of the misty sea. The hidden mermaid stirred instantly, icy eyes turning uniformly toward Lerei, sharp with warning and resentment. Lerei lowered her gaze, ignoring their hostility, fixing her eyes firmly on the ship's deck. There stood a young man. Unlike the flustered, terrified sailors, he stood tall and straight at the bow, white robes fluttering in the sea breeze. His brows were cold and profound, his eyes free of the slightest confusion, only absolute clarity and composure. The siren song that had ensnared every mortal had not shaken him in the least. Sensing the sea's strangeness, he rested a hand on his sword hilt, sharp gaze sweeping the boundless fog, his brows taut with vigilance and solemnity. Moonlight gilded his refined profile, tracing a crisp jawline, cold yet gentle, bearing the unique warmth and fortitude of mortal nobility. For the first time in 1,000 years, turbulent waves crashed across Lerei's stagnant heart. She had seen countless humans, greedy, cowardly, cruel, numb. But never one like him. Trapped in a foggy purgatory, assailed by unearthly song, yet he retained his integrity and calm, his eyes holding mountains, seas, and unyielding character. That is immortal noble, Viscount Aliston, an elder mermaid beside her intoned coldly, her voice carrying the inherent indifference of deep-sea creatures. The highest rank of humans, intelligent, resolute, yet utterly hypocritical and fickle. Lerei, cast aside your pity. All humans are fleeting ants, shallow and unworthy of your exception. Lerei did not reply, her gaze clinging relentlessly to the white-robed figure. In that instant, disaster struck. The once calm sea churned violently. Hidden deep-sea undercurrents erupted without warning, surging waves towering several feet high to crash savagely against the sturdy frigate. Gales raged, fog billowed, and the once gentle misty sea transformed into a devouring inferno overnight. It was the ocean's retribution, the sea's wrath unleashed by her enraged kin for Lerei's interference, determined to capsize the vessel and slay every mortal aboard. The massive hull lurched violently, wooden planks groaning under immense strain. Sails were torn to shreds in the gale, splinters and ropes scattering through the air. Panicked sailors screamed and fled, powerless against the raging deep-sea forces. Within moments, hidden reefs driven by undercurrents slammed into the hull, splitting a massive gash in the sturdy wood. Frigid sea water flooded the cabin relentlessly. The ship was doomed to sink. Desperate cries, roaring waves, and splintering wood merged into a deafening cacophony echoing across the misty sea. Lerei's pupils contracted sharply. She tore through the currents without hesitation, speeding toward the sinking ship, her silver-blue tail cutting through the dark water like a fleeting shadow. She watched panicked crowds scatter, watched vibrant lives swallowed by the waves, watched countless figures sink into the icy abyss, struggling and fading into nothingness. As the hull capsized completely, the white-robed young man was struck by a mast on his shoulder. Agony threw his balance off, and he plunged into the pitch-black, freezing seawater. Waterlogged heavy robes dragged him relentlessly downward. Warm blood stained the surrounding sea, blooming a glaring crimson under the moonlight. His consciousness faded rapidly, his body growing heavy, his vision blurring until he lost all strength to struggle. The deep sea's frigid cold could snuff out mortal life in an instant. He would perish within moments, becoming another ghost of the misty sea. Her kin watched dispassionately, waiting for the noble's demise, unmoved. To them, mortal life and death were trivial, daily occurrences in the endless ocean. Only Lerei broke through all barriers, speeding to his side. It was the first time in her 1,000 years she had ever touched a human. Her cool, slender fingers caught his falling body. The touch of her icy skin against his warm flesh sent a violent tremor through her mermaid heart, an organ that had known no pain, no joy, no emotion for a millennium. Warm, living, scorching mortal heat spread from her fingertips through every inch of her body, awakening all her dormant senses. She lifted her gaze to the waning moon and churning fog waves, channeling all her spiritual power to cradle the unconscious youth, breaking through the violent undercurrents, to swim relentlessly toward the shore. Behind her came her kin's icy warnings and rebukes, carrying the authority of deep-sea law and the omen of punishment. Lerei, you dare defy the fate of the deep sea and shelter a mortal, you shall face divine retribution. A mermaid who falls in love destroys her own soul. 1,000 years of cultivation, undone in a single day. The icy curse pierced the seawater, coiling around her forevermore, an unshakable shackle for all her remaining days. Chapter 2, Warmth upon the shore. Dawn broke, and the thick fog dispersed. Pale morning light pierced the clouds, spilling over the desolate reef-strewn shore, chasing away the cold gloom of the night before. Gentle waves lapped the sand, washing away the last wreckage of the shipwreck, sweeping splinters and broken ropes back into the deep sea, as if the catastrophic storm had never happened. The misty sea returned to its usual calm, only scattered floating hull fragments, bearing silent witness to the overnight ruin. Lerei laid the unconscious youth in a sheltered shallow reef cove. Shallow sea water lapped at his ankles, keeping his body mild and safe from being swept away by the tides. She knelt half upon the cool wet sand, her silver-blue tail spread across the shore, scales shimmering softly in the morning light. Freed from the deep sea's darkness and cold, she looked soft and lively. It was her first time setting foot on land. For 1,000 years confined to the sunless abyss, she had never seen such clear sky, felt such warm breeze, or touched soft, warm sand. Mortal dawns were gentle and mild, sea breezes fresh and warm, vegetation brimming with vibrant life, nothing like the dead, frigid deep sea. Wonder mingled with trepidation in her heart. Mermaids belonged to the ocean. Stranded from water too long, their spiritual power faded rapidly, their scales dulled, their bodies weakened, until their essence dissipated and their souls perished. Worse still, having defied clan law and sheltered a mortal, she was already bound by invisible punishment, enduring constant spiritual decay with every passing second. Yet she could not bear to leave. She lowered her gaze, staring quietly at the unconscious youth beside her. Morning light smoothed the tension and sharpness from his face, leaving him peaceful and childlike. His shoulder wound still seeped faint red blood, his complexion pale and haggard, yet his breath remained steady and faint. Lerei stretched out a tentative finger, brushing gently over his cool brows. The soft, warm texture was a warmth the deep sea could never offer. 1,000 years of solitude melted away in that instant. She finally understood why all living things clung to the mortal world, why clan laws forbade mermaid affection. Mortal warmth was too enchanting, mortal encounters too precious, once tasted, never forsaken. She leaned down slowly, pouring her 1,000 years of accumulated deep-sea spiritual power into his body. Pure blue light flowed from her fingertips, seeping into his wounds, mending broken bones and restoring his depleted vitality. Mermaid spiritual power was the purest healing force in the world, yet every ounce she gave cost her own cultivation, drawing on her millennium of life and essence. Yet Lerei gave freely, without hesitation. She only wished for him to live well, to abide in this bright mortal world, far from the cold slaughter of the deep sea and the perils of the misty waves. After an indeterminate time, his eyelashes fluttered faintly, a low groan escaping his throat as he slowly opened his eyes. Blinding morning light made him squint instinctively. Consciousness returned from chaos, resurrecting vivid memories of the capsizing ship, crushing waves, and desperate cries of the night before. He remembered the deafening crack of splitting wood, the suffocating plunge into icy water, the endless darkness swallowing his senses. He had thought himself dead, drowned in the abyss. Yet now he lay on warm sand, free of bitter cold, his agony reduced to faint weariness. Most shocking of all was the peerless beauty sitting before him. Her raven hair spilled over her shoulders and the sand, her skin fair and translucent, her features ethereal and unearthly. Most breathtaking of all, instead of human legs, she possessed a slender, graceful tail covered in shimmering silver blue scales, glowing brightly in the morning sun like a divine miracle. A mermaid. One of the fabled misty sea sirens, who beguiled sailors with song and devoured mortal lives. Aliston's pupils contracted sharply, instant vigilance surging through him. He struggled to sit and draw his sword, his childhood tales of treacherous, bloodthirsty mermaids flooding his mind, fair of face, venomous at heart, gentle in guise, murderous in nature. But the moment he tensed his muscles, his shoulder flooded with weakness, and he fell back onto the sand, powerless to lift a hand. Seeing him awake, Lerei's eyes lit up with tiny bright sparks, clear and brimming with pure joy, no trace of eeriness, no cold cruelty, like an innocent child beholding the mortal world for the first time. "You're awake." Her voice was clear and soft, nothing like her kin's bewitching songs, pure, ethereal, carrying the unique tranquility of the deep sea, soothing all his panic and weariness. Aliston froze. He had beheld countless beauties, court ladies, maidens of the marketplace, each with their own charm, yet none could compare to her transcendent grace. Her beauty was uncrafted, innate and sacred. Though she was a fabled sea demon, her eyes held not a shred of impurity. "Did you save me?" His voice was hoarse with disuse, laced with utter disbelief. Misty sea mermaids only took lives, never spared them, it was an unbroken century-old rule. The entire crew had perished, leaving him the sole survivor, rescued by the very sea demon mortals feared above all else. Lerei nodded gently, her tail flicking lightly to scatter fine sand, her eyes holding tentative hope. I saved you. Do not fear me. I will not hurt you. She knew mortal fear and hatred of her kind, knew mermaids were synonymous with disaster and death in human lore. She restrained all deep-sea aura and malice, desperate to ease his heart. Aliston stared into her clear eyes, his vigilance softening unconsciously. He could feel her complete lack of ill will. Her gaze was gentle and pure, curious and sincere, more like an innocent forest spirit than a bloodthirsty siren. Was the song last night your doing? He asked softly, seeking clarity on the night's bizarre events. It was my kin, Lerei admitted plainly, a faint melancholy in her tone. They hunt sailors by fate, slaughter by instinct. But I am different. I do not wish to harm anyone. For 1,000 years, she had rejected her clan's fate, refused slaughter and cold cruelty. Worn apart from her kin, she craved mortal warmth and worldly tenderness, not bloodshed. Aliston fell silent for a long while, his heart stirring with unbidden tenderness at the sorrow in her eyes. The world claimed mermaids were heartless, yet this mermaid possessed the softest soul. She had defied her clan and endured punishment to save a stranger, her purity and kindness far surpassing countless hypocritical humans. I am Aliston Kane, he said slowly, offering his name to bridge the distance between them. What is your name? Lerei. She spoke the word softly, tender and warm. I have no surname. Deep-sea mermaids bear only single names, unchained through eternal years. Aliston gazed at her clear brows and shimmering tail, the hardened corners of his heart melting gently. Lerei, he repeated softly, his voice low and warm. A beautiful name. The morning sun hung perfect, sea breezes soft, waves murmuring gently. On the desolate reef-strewn shore, a deep-sea mermaid and a mortal noble met across the chasm of race and fate, in a tender first encounter. Lerei stared at the young man before her, drinking in his gentle features and warm voice. The 1,000 years of barren solitude in her heart were finally filled with mortal warmth. In that moment, she would gladly abandon her boundless ocean, her 1,000-year lifespan, her eternal freedom, if only to stay in the mortal world, by his side, for a fleeting yet perfect love. Chapter 3: Days of Shared Tenderness. The gentle days on the shore slipped by in half a month. Remote and desolate, the coast remained untouched by mortal crowds. Perched on the edge of the misty sea, far from towns and villages, beset by perennial gales and jagged reefs, it knew only seabirds and waves, becoming a hidden pure haven for Lerei and Aliston. Thanks to Lerei's spiritual healing, Aliston's wounds had fully healed. The mermaid's divine curative power mended both his fresh injuries and old ailments from years of voyages, leaving him healthier than ever. No longer a noble viscount bound by duty, etiquette, and endless vigilance, he shed the pretense of courtly life and naval tension, living simply and freely as an ordinary man. Each dawn, before the morning fog lifted, Lerei swam back to shore from the deep sea to await his waking. She brought the clearest deep-sea spring water, sweet sea fruits, and luminous rare pearls, laying treasures unheard of in the mortal world at his feet. Possessing countless ocean rarities from her 1,000 years in the abyss, she coveted none, choosing only to bestow them on him. In return, Aliston took her to pick wild shore fruits, collect colorful seashells, and tell her tales of the mortal world. He spoke of the 4 seasons cycle, spring growth, summer bloom, autumn harvest, winter rest. He told her of bustling city streets, mortal joys and sorrows, reunion and parting, regret and devotion. He wove tales of courtly splendor, marketplace liveliness, vast mountains and rivers, the full spectrum of mortal life. Lerei listened silently, her clear eyes filled with wonder and curiosity. The deep sea knew no day or night, no seasons, no firelight, no love or loss. For 1,000 years, she had endured monotonous solitude, never imagining the mortal world could be so vivid and fervent. She too shared the secrets of the deep sea with him, the resplendent coral palaces, darting luminous fish, slumbering ancient sea beasts, and the millennium-old fate of her kind. She spoke of her kin's cold indifference, the cruelty of deep-sea laws, and her own endless solitude and uncertainty. Alaston listened quietly, his heart aching with pity. The world envied mermaids their eternal youth, ageless beauty, and divine gifts, yet no one knew immortality was the cruelest cage. Endless years brought no companionship, no longing, no affection, only endless watching of mortal worlds turn while trapped in the cold abyss forever. Lerei, you have never seen mortal sunlight, never felt mortal warmth, have you? Alaston asked one lazy afternoon, sitting on the sand beside her as she lay listening to the tide. Lerei nodded softly, her tail patting the sea surface to send tiny splashes flying, melancholy in her eyes. For 1,000 years, I only watched the mortal world from afar, your passing ships, your flickering fires. My kin say mortal love is illusory, mortal lives fleeting, that to fall in love is to self-destruct, to covet is to fall. But I think the mortal world is beautiful. She lifted her gaze to his face, eyes clear and sincere. After meeting you, I know eternal solitude is worth less than a fleeting fervent moment. 1,000 years of loneliness could not compare to half a month of shared days. Alaston's heart trembled violently. He brushed stray hair from her cheek with gentle fingers, touch soft and cautious. If you wish, I will take you to see every mortal mountain and river, he promised firmly. Spring blossoms, summer starlight, autumn fallen leaves, winter snow, all the mortal wonders there are. Joy bloomed bright in Lerei's eyes, fading quickly into desolation. I cannot. Mermaids belong to the sea. We cannot dwell on land long. Without sea water to sustain us, our power fades until our souls disperse. And I have defied clan law to shelter a mortal, bound by deep-sea punishment, forbidden from straying far from these waters forever. She craved mortal warmth, craved his companionship, yet could not escape her racial fate and ocean shackles. Alaston's heart ached bitterly. He knew their races were divided, their fates opposed, their path seemingly hopeless. Yet their meeting was too stunning, their days too tender, he could not let go. There must be a way for both, he said softly, resolve steady in his voice. I refuse to believe fate is fixed, that different paths can never converge. Lerei, I wish to stay with you, not just for these half-month shore days, but for every coming moment. Tears glistened in Lerei's eyes. For 1,000 years, she had known no sorrow, no tears, yet now she tasted the bitter sweetness of mortal affection. Mortal lives last but a century, she whispered, voicing her deepest fear. Your youth fades fast. 100 years from now, you will turn to dust, and I will remain alone, bound to endless memories and eternal solitude. A fleeting companionship is but a hollow dream, leaving only lifelong pain. This was the deepest obsession and fear of mermaids. Having witnessed countless mortal births and deaths, joys and sorrows, she knew mortal love was the most painful thing in the world. Passionate companionship ended inevitably in separation, leaving one to bear endless longing through endless years. Alaston fell silent briefly, then spoke softly yet unyieldingly. 100 years is short, yet every year can be complete. Mortal love does not seek eternity, only regretless encounters and faithful companionship. Even if we part in the end, every day with you will outshine all the rest of my life. Lerei, I fear not brevity, not parting. I fear only never meeting you, never loving you fully. The sea breeze carried warm tenderness, sweeping away all hesitation. Lerei stared into his devoted, resolute eyes, the shackles of 1,000 years shattering in her heart. Clan commandments, ocean fate, racial divides, temporal gaps, all became meaningless. She lifted her gaze, desolation gone, only fervent devotion and resolve remaining. I will stay with you, she whispered earnestly. No regret for our encounter, no sorrow for our days. In that moment, the deep-sea princess abandoned her millennial fate, defying eternal punishment to fall willingly into mortal love, embracing a fleeting yet unrepentant encounter. From then on, every shore day was pure tenderness. By day, they wandered the coast, watching tides rise and fall, clouds drift and gather, chatting of mortal trivialities, dwelling in peaceful tranquility. Aliston taught her mortal speech, etiquette, and love. Lerei accompanied him to witness coastal scenery, soothing his inner weariness and solitude. By night, moonlight spilled over the waves, and Lerei hovered in the shallow sea to sing for him. No longer a bewitching, murderous melody, her song was pure and healing, washing away all his fatigue and calming his restless heart. Aliston knew this was the most precious gift a mermaid could give. Their songs could enchant and kill, or soothe and heal. Only those cherished with true love could hear such pure, tender music. Time flowed soft and gentle. Those fleeting half-months became the most precious, perfect memory of both their lives. Yet peaceful bliss was fleeting. Deep-sea punishment never ceased. Her kin's surveillance never wavered. On the night of the full moon, undercurrents churned in the abyss. Countless icy eyes opened in the dark waters, fixed firmly on the tender pair on the shore. The deep sea's wrath had finally arrived. Chapter 4: Punishment of the Deep Sea. The full moon rose again, the night heavy and dark. The moon hung pale and ghastly in the ink-black sky, cold silver light blanketing a dead silent ocean. Sea breezes turned sharp and bitter, rolling violent waves to crash relentlessly against the reefs. The entire misty sea was shrouded in oppressive darkness, thick with icy malice, suffocating all breath. Lerei stood in the shallow surf, water lapping at her waist. Her silver-blue tail glowed faintly in the dark, yet lost its former radiance and luster. She could feel the punishing aura coiling tighter around her with every passing moment. 3 unforgivable sins, defying clan law, sheltering a mortal, loving a human, compounded her punishment day by day. Her spiritual power drained rapidly, her scales dulled, her body weakened, even her ability to maintain her form fading away. Lerei, return. An ancient, ethereal voice echoed from the deep abyss, carrying supreme icy authority through the surging waves to the shore. The deep-sea matriarch emerged from the chaotic undercurrents, silver hair drifting in the wild currents, her face solemn and aged, no warmth in her eyes, only the cold, impartial justice of ocean law. Guardian of the mermaid clan, wielder of deep-sea fate and punishment, she had witnessed countless mermaid births and demises. You were born pure of spirit, gifted beyond your kin, destined to rule the deep sea and dwell in eternal peace. Why cling to illusory mortal vanities, ruining your future, severing your own path? The matriarch's voice boomed across the waves, laced with regret and unyielding authority. Lerei lifted her gaze to the dark abyss, standing firm and unyielding, her tone clear and resolute. Matriarch, laws are cold, eternal years are barren. I refuse to endure endless deep-sea solitude any longer. Mortal love is fleeting yet fervent, far better than empty eternal cold. I love him, and I regret nothing. Nothing. The matriarch's cold laugh whipped up gales and towering waves. Do you know the price of loving a mortal? You will forfeit mermaid immortality, lose your 1,000 years of cultivation, be exiled from the deep sea forever. Your power will fade until you turn to mortal dust, vanishing without trace. Do you still have no regret? I have no regret. Lerei's every word was firm, her eyes filled with unshakable devotion. The deep sea gave me eternal life, yet endless solitude. The mortal world gives me brevity, yet lifelong warmth. If eternal loneliness is fate, I would rather defy heaven for a fleeting companionship. Aliston's heart shook violently. He strode to the water's edge, staring at the slender yet resolute girl in the waves, his chest aching with burning sorrow. He finally understood the crushing price she had paid to stay by his side. Great matriarch, all fault is mine. Aliston bowed respectfully, his tone sincere and unyielding. I clung to Lerei's tenderness. I insisted on keeping her. Punish me, not her. I will bear all heavenly retribution in her stead. Fragile and fleeting as a mortal, insignificant against the vast ocean and ancient sea spirits, he would still shield her from all storm and punishment. The matriarch glanced at him indifferently, pity and disdain in her eyes. A mortal ant, your life a fleeting spark, you cannot bear her sins, cannot ward off her punishment, cannot protect your ill-fated love. Human and mermaid fates oppose each other. Your encounter was a sin against heaven from the start. The moment her words fell, the deep-sea undercurrents erupted completely. Black waves churned and roared, countless icy water blades surging from the abyss, charged with punishing malice, sweeping straight for Lerei. Violent gales swallowed the shallow shore in an instant. Lerei. Aliston's pupils shrank. He charged recklessly into the waves, trying to shield her with his body. But mortal flesh could not resist heavenly sea punishment. Towering waves slammed him brutally backward, internal organs jolting with pain, blood spilling from his lips as he crashed heavily onto the sand, powerless to move. Watching him injured, Lerei's heart tore with agony. She channeled all her remaining spiritual power, erecting a pale blue barrier to block every incoming water blade. Piercing pain swept through her body. Blades sliced her skin, tiny blood droplets melting into the seawater, dyeing the shallows faint red. Shining scales peeled away one by one, drifting into the deep sea, her 1,000 years of cultivation crumbling rapidly under divine punishment. She staggered in the raging waves, growing weaker and paler by the second, yet never stepping back, bearing every blow alone to guard the shore. Matriarch, I accept all punishment. Lerei's clear voice cut through the storm, steady and unyielding. Only spare him, spare all innocent mortals. I voluntarily renounce my deep-sea power, abandon my mermaid identity, and swear never to set foot in the ocean again. Do you understand what you sacrifice? The matriarch's voice was grave. You will lose your enchanting song, your healing power, your endless lifespan. You will become a mere mortal, subject to pain, weariness, illness, aging, and fleeting life. I understand. Lerei nodded softly, no fear in her heart, only gentle certainty. As long as I may stay by his side, I will sacrifice everything willingly. Endless deep-sea solitude could not compare to a single mortal day. Boundless divine power could not equal a single trace of his tenderness. The matriarch stared at her long, witnessing unprecedented devotion and obsession in her eyes. For the first time in her eternal life guarding the sea, her icy heart wavered. She had seen countless mermaids crave slaughter, fear punishment, obey fate. Never one willing to abandon immortality and divine gifts to defy destiny for a fleeting mortal love. After a long silence, the matriarch sighed softly, her ancient voice laced with endless lament. So be it. Obsession has rooted in your heart, fate cannot be changed. I cannot stop you. I will spare the mortal, lift the extreme heavenly punishment. But rules cannot be broken, sins cannot be forgiven. She raised her fingertip, condensing the ocean's oldest curse power, faint blue light swirling with the chains of fate. I grant you 3 years of mortal flesh. For 3 years, you shall possess human legs, walk the mortal earth, know human warmth, and stay by his side. You will lose your mermaid song, your ocean power, your healing gifts. You will feel pain, fatigue, sickness, and age like any mortal. When the 3 years end, your mermaid origin will vanish completely. Rootless and soulless, no afterlife, no reincarnation, you will turn to dust and vanish utterly from the world, gone forever. This is my only mercy, the final price for your forbidden love. 3 years of mortal dreams, a fleeting earthly floating life. Do you accept? 3 years. Barely a blink against a mermaid's eternal lifespan, insignificant and fleeting. 3 years of companionship, ending in complete annihilation, no trace left behind. No rebirth, no future, no return. A single encounter, a single dream, waking to emptiness, all things ending. Cruel, desperate, absolute. Aliston trembled violently on the sand, his heart shattered by agony. He struggled to rise, to refuse this cruel fate for her, to tell her he would rather never meet her than watch her vanish into nothingness. But before he could speak, Lerei nodded softly in the waves, her smile gentle and clear. I accept. One word sealed her fate, locked her destiny forever. Ancient deep-sea curse light enveloped her entirely. Her radiant silver-blue tail blazed bright, scales peeling and dissolving completely. Her tail contracted and transformed under the blue aura. Bones reshaped, blood renewed, race reborn. Agony more torturous than 1,000 blade wounds swept through her. Yet Lerei clenched her teeth, not a single cry escaping her lips, her gaze fixed steadily on the white-robed youth on the shore, full of tenderness and hope. Gales subsided, waves returned to the sea, full moonlight spilling soft once more. The mermaid was gone from the shallow surf. In her place stood a maiden in plain white mortal robes. Raven hair, ethereal brows, fair skin, slender figure, too clean, long human legs planted barefoot on the cool sand. All trace of the deep sea vanished, transformed utterly into a mortal girl. Yet her eyes remained clear, her heart sincere. Only her spiritual power was gone, her divine aura faded, no trace left of the deep-sea princess's grace and gifts. She stepped slowly across the fine sand toward Aliston, her steps light, bearing unparalleled mortal purity and tenderness. Aliston. Her voice was soft and sweet, no longer the ethereal celestial song of a mermaid, merely the gentle tone of an ordinary mortal girl, yet still endlessly beautiful to his ears. I can stay with you for 3 years. 3 mortal years, day after day of companionship. Even if the end brought annihilation and emptiness, she would embrace it willingly. Tears spilled uncontrollably from Aliston's eyes as he stared at the devoted girl before him, heart torn apart by pain and tenderness. He stumbled to his feet, rushing forward to pull her into a tight embrace, warm and cherishing, filled with endless heartache and guilt. Good. His voice was hoarse and broken, every word dripping with sorrow. 3 years is enough. From now on, every day, every season, I will protect you, give you perfection, never betray your sacrifice and devotion. Moonlight embraced them, waves whispered softly. The deep-sea princess abandoned eternal fate for a 3-year mortal dream. The mortal noble devoted all his tenderness to a fleeting, profound love. The dream began, tenderness flourished. No one knew this perfect beginning hid a doomed, sorrowful end. Chapter 5, Mortal Fireworks. 3 days later, mortal footsteps finally arrived at the misty shore. British Royal Search ships navigated the foggy seas, tracing shipwreck debris to the remote coast, finally discovering the sole surviving Viscount Aliston Kane. All believed the Viscount had narrowly escaped death in the shipwreck, enduring harsh trials to survive. No one knew the secrets of the misty sea, no one knew the white-robed girl beside him was a mermaid, who had defied fate and abandoned her identity. Aliston claimed Lerei was an orphan girl from a remote island, her family all deceased, helpless and alone, whom he had rescued and taken under his care out of compassion. The story was flawless, beyond doubt. The world only praised the gentle, kind noble Viscount for sheltering a helpless orphan. The ship sailed slowly away from the misty sea, bound for the bustling British capital. Lerei stood on the deck, glancing back at the boundless foggy ocean. The sea that had birthed and imprisoned her for 1,000 years, that had punished her for her longing, lay quiet and dormant at last. No more surveillance from her kin, no more violent undercurrents or storms. She had severed all ocean ties, abandoned her mermaid identity, become a mortal wanderer with no return. Yet her heart held no regret, only peace. She turned back to the young man beside her, a soft smile in her clear eyes. To abandon the boundless deep sea for mortal fireworks, with him by her side, it was the best fate she could ask for. After half a month's voyage, the ship docked at the British capital. The bustling metropolis was worlds apart from the desolate shore and dark abyss. Towering buildings lined crowded streets, carriages shuttled endlessly, markets thronged with people, mortal fireworks flourishing day and night. Days were lively with commerce and crowds, nights blazed with 10,000 lights and starry skies. It was a mortal world Lerei had never known, vibrant, grand, alive, warm, brimming with endless life and tenderness. New to mortal life, innocent and unworldly, she marveled at every sight. She paused on streets to gaze at blooming flowers, knelt to watch street birds flit and fly, stood silently to admire the glow of mortal city lights. Alliston kept her safely by his side, patiently explaining mortal ways, tenderly tolerating all her innocence and naivety, pouring every ounce of his tenderness into letting her experience her short mortal life to the fullest. He brought her to his viscount mansion, arranging a delicate, peaceful courtyard for her, preparing fine clothes, sweet delicacies, and exquisite trinkets. The courtyard bloomed with flowers and greenery, quiet and elegant, far from court intrigue, a safe, gentle mortal haven he had crafted solely for her. The once lonely deep-sea princess, ruler of an entire ocean, finally possessed her own small, warm home, exclusive tenderness and devotion. Yet curiosity and gossip swirled endlessly after her arrival in the capital. Gentle, dignified Viscount Alliston was the beloved dream of countless noble ladies, never once drawing close to any woman, until he returned with an unknown, unranked orphan girl, doting on her exclusively. She instantly became the hottest topic of noble society. Some wondered at her beauty and origins, some envied her exclusive favor, some speculated her background, some secretly mocked her humble birth unworthy of a noble's side. Rumors and petty malice lingered around them endlessly. Pure-hearted Lerei, tempered by 1,000 years of ocean solitude, cared nothing for mortal fame, gain, jealousy or scheming. She knew only that the man beside her treated her with kindness, and that was enough. Alliston refused to let her suffer a shred of mortal malice. He publicly claimed her, shielding her from all slander, silencing all idle gossip. He brought her to every court banquet and noble gathering, standing proudly beside her, his favor unhidden, declaring openly that Lerei was the only person he cherished and loved in his life. He blocked all worldly storms for her, preserving her innocence and purity, ensuring her 3 mortal years free of grievance and harm. After that, no one dared mock, question, or belittle the mysterious white-robed girl. Her 3 mortal years were warm, grand, vivid, and complete. In spring, Alliston took her wandering suburban flower fields, admiring blooming blossoms and falling petals in the breeze. He wove flowers into her hair, sitting with her in the woods to listen to birdsong and enjoy spring peace. In summer, they boated on the lake, watching starry skies and bright moon, letting the gentle lake ripples rock their quiet nights. Alliston would row the wooden boat slowly toward the lake center, where the water was calm and free from the bustle of the city. Fireflies flickered above the lotus ponds, their tiny glimmers weaving a soft, flowing light that mirrored the scattered stars in the velvet night sky. Lerei would sit cross-legged on the boat's soft wool cushion, her loose hair drifting over her shoulders and dipping lightly into the cool lake water, her clear eyes wide with fascination, at a mortal summer she had never tasted in the eternal dark abyss. She had known only endless, frigid sea water her entire existence, rough, turbulent, and unforgiving, bound to tides and storms. This lake water was mild and docile, warm under the summer night breeze, holding the faint fragrance of lotus and green grass, soft enough to cradle every trivial joy. She would stretch her fingers to trail across the water's surface, chasing the flickering firefly reflections that darted and scattered with every ripple, a faint, genuine smile curving her lips, bright enough to outshine the summer stars. Alliston would set down his oars, leaning back against the boat's wooden beam, his gaze fixed solely on her unguarded, joyful face. He had witnessed the grandeur of royal banquets, the splendor of continental landscapes, the ferocity of ocean storms, yet none of the world's magnificence could compare to the simple radiance of Lerei smiling in the summer night. He had long known their love was a fleeting dream, a 3-year mortal reprieve bought with her eternal life, yet every quiet, tender moment with her gnawed softly at his heart, weaving deeper obsession and sorrow into his bones. "Do you like mortal summers?" he would ask in a low, soft voice, reaching out to tuck a stray lock of wind-tousled hair behind her ear, his touch gentle enough not to startle the night breeze. Lerei nodded earnestly, turning to face him, her eyes filled with starlight and unadulterated fondness. "I like all mortal seasons. Summer has fireflies and lotus fragrance, warm winds and quiet nights. It is nothing like the endless cold and darkness of the deep sea. Every day here is new, every night is warm, every moment is worth cherishing." She tilted her head slightly, a faint trace of lingering melancholy flickering in her bright eyes, fleeting enough that most would miss it, yet impossible for Alliston to overlook. In the deep sea, there are no seasons, no day and night. Time flows endlessly, monotonous and empty. We do not feel heat or cold, do not know joy or sorrow, do not possess anything worth holding close. I used to think eternity was all I had, but now I know eternity is just endless waiting for nothing. Alliston's heart tightened sharply with pain. He reached out to hold her cold, slender hand in his warm palm, lacing their fingers tightly together, anchoring her firmly in the mortal warmth he could give her. "You do not have to wait any longer. For these 3 years, every season, every day, every night belongs only to you. I will walk every mortal scenery with you, and fill every single moment with tenderness." Lerei's smile bloomed brighter, and she leaned forward gently, resting her head lightly on his shoulder. The faint fragrance of lotus and clean sea breeze that still lingered faintly on her hair wrapped around him, a unique scent that belonged solely to her, a mark of her dual identity as a sea creature turned mortal lover. She no longer had the radiant silver-blue tail of a mermaid, no longer possessed divine healing power or enchanting song, yet she still carried the quiet purity of the deep sea, a grace no mortal woman could ever replicate. They would stay on the lake until the deepest hours of night, until the fireflies faded and the stars shifted across the sky. Alliston would wrap his wool cloak around her thin shoulders, shielding her from the faint night chill, and row slowly back to the shore, carrying her gentle dreams through the quiet summer darkness. Autumn brought crimson fallen leaves and crisp, clear skies to the capital. The suburban forests were dyed in layers of golden and scarlet, the air filled with the dry, sweet scent of fallen foliage and ripe wild fruits. Alliston would take Lerei walking along the forest paths at dusk, stepping on the thick carpet of fallen leaves that crunched softly under their feet, listening to the distant chirp of migrating birds and the rustle of autumn wind through the treetops. Lerei loved autumn the most among all mortal seasons. She loved the gentle coolness that chased away summer's swelter, loved the rich, warm hues that painted the entire world, loved the quiet sense of harvest and tranquility that lingered in the air. She would bend down repeatedly to pick up uniquely shaped fallen leaves, tucking the most beautiful ones into the pages of the poetry books Alliston had given her, preserving the fleeting beauty of mortal autumns that would never exist in her former ocean home. "The leaves fall every year," Lerei murmured softly one evening, staring at the golden maple leaf in her palm, her tone soft and contemplative. They grow in spring, flourish in summer, wither in autumn, and rest in winter. Every cycle is complete. Every ending paves the way for a new beginning. Mortal things have cycles and reincarnations, but I have none. She spoke without sorrow, merely stating a calm fact, yet every word pricked at Aliston's heart. He stopped walking, turning to hold her face gently, his thumbs brushing softly across her cheeks, his gaze deep and burning with suppressed pain and tenderness. I will remember all your seasons for you, he whispered hoarsely. I will keep every leaf you collect, every flower you weave, every night we spend together. Even if you fade away in the end, I will hold all our memories close, for a lifetime, until my last breath. Lerei blinked slowly, and a faint, translucent tear slipped down her cheek, landing lightly on the fallen leaf in her hand. It was a mortal tear, warm and salty, a feeling she had never known as an immortal mermaid. In the deep sea, there was no crying, no sorrow, no regret, only endless indifference and survival. But mortal love had taught her to feel, to grieve, to cherish, to fear loss. She did not wipe away her tears, merely smiled softly, lifting her hand to touch his furrowed brows. Do not be sad, Aliston. 3 years is enough. I have lived a complete mortal life, felt mortal warmth and love, possessed the only person I have ever cherished. No other mermaid in history has ever had such luck. I am content. Contentment, yet bittersweet. Every joy they shared was laced with the hidden shadow of an inevitable ending, a ticking countdown no mortal power could stop. Winter draped the capital in pure white snow. The entire city was wrapped in silent frost, rooftops, branches, and courtyards all covered in thick, soft snow, turning the bustling mortal world into a quiet, pure snowscape. Lerei had never seen snow in the deep sea. The ocean's cold was biting, violent, and endless, but mortal winter snow was gentle, silent, and beautiful, falling softly from the grey sky, settling lightly on every corner of the world. She would stand in the courtyard for hours, bare hands outstretched to catch the falling snowflakes, watching them melt quickly into tiny water droplets against her warm palms, fleeting and fragile like their love. Aliston would stand behind her, wrapping her hands in his own warm ones, blowing soft warmth into her frozen fingers, pressing warm kisses to her cold knuckles. Snow melts so fast, Lerei whispered, staring at the vanishing snowflakes in her palm. It is beautiful, but it does not last. Like us, she did not say, but the unspoken words hung gently in the frosty air, understood perfectly by both of them. Aliston pulled her tightly into his arms, shielding her from the cold winter wind, his chin resting lightly on the top of her head, his voice low and firm, carrying a silent vow. I will make every fleeting beauty last in memory. I will make every day we spend together warmer than all winters combined. He would light warm charcoal fires in the courtyard pavilion, prepare sweet hot cocoa and roasted chestnuts, sit with her beside the crackling fire, watching the snow fall silently outside the pavilion curtains. He would read mortal poems and epics to her, tell her ancient mortal tales of love and parting, while she leaned lazily in his arms, listening quietly, her eyes drowsy and soft with warmth and peace. In these quiet winter nights, time flowed slow and gentle, as if the world itself was reluctant to disturb their fleeting happiness, as if the ruthless fate counting down her days would pause for their love. Day by day, season by season, the first year of their mortal companionship slipped by quietly. Lerei adapted perfectly to mortal life. She learned to speak fluent mortal language with elegant grace, mastered mortal etiquette and manners, learned to weave flowers, brew tea, paint landscapes, and write poems. She no longer retained any trace of the ignorant, innocent sea girl who first stepped onto mortal land. She grew gentle, quiet, and refined, yet still retained her pure, unworldly heart, untouched by the vanity and scheming of noble society. Her beauty became renowned throughout the capital. Countless nobles and lords praised Aliston's good fortune, envying him for possessing such a gentle, beautiful, and pure-hearted lover. Many high-ranking families attempted to propose marriages for their daughters, hoping to win the viscount's favor and status, yet Alaston rejected every single one, without hesitation, never sparing a glance for any other woman. At every royal banquet, every noble gathering, he kept Lerei firmly by his side. He would pour her wine gently, pick up delicate pastries for her, block all curious and probing gazes, and respond to all idle inquiries with a cold, distant attitude, making it clear to the entire capital that Lerei was the only love of his life, irreplaceable and inviolable. Rumors gradually faded, replaced by widespread admiration for their devout love. No one knew that this enviable mortal romance was a doomed deal sealed with a mermaid's life, a 3-year dream borrowed from the cruel deep-sea fate. As the second year unfolded, subtle changes began to creep up on Lerei's body. She had lost all mermaid powers, yet her physical state still differed slightly from ordinary mortals. She did not age as rapidly as mortal humans, her skin still as translucent and fair as the day she transformed, her eyes still clear and bright, untouched by mortal worldly weariness. But occasionally, in the dead of night, she would feel faint bursts of weakness sweeping through her body, a dull, lingering ache in her bones, a silent reminder of her fading origin. The deep-sea curse never truly left her. It lurked silently in every inch of her mortal flesh, eroding her remaining vitality day by day, slowly wearing away the 3 years of mortal life granted by the matriarch. Alaston noticed every tiny change. He noticed that she grew tired more easily than before, that she would fall asleep unconsciously while reading or enjoying the scenery, that her hands would turn cold even in warm summer weather, that her bright eyes would occasionally dim with invisible exhaustion. His heart was constantly shrouded in suppressed panic and pain. He searched through countless ancient books and mortal classics, traveled to remote temples to seek wise sages, consulted renowned physicians across the country, hoping to find a way to break the curse, to extend her life, to retain the person he loved more than his own existence. Yet all efforts were in vain. Mortal medicine could cure physical illness and injury, but it could never resolve the ancient curse of the deep sea, never defy the fate set by the ocean's oldest laws. The 3-year lifespan was an unbreakable decree, a fixed ending written into her soul the day she abandoned her mermaid identity. Every physician who examined her would shake their heads, claiming her body was healthy and flawless, no trace of illness or disease, yet her vitality was inexplicably fading, like a candle burning from the inside out, slowly consuming itself until total extinction. Faced with powerless despair, Alaston could only hide his anxiety and sorrow deep in his heart, never letting Lerei see his fragility. He doubled his tenderness and care, arranging every day of her life to be warm and perfect, trying his best to dilute the shadow of the upcoming ending with endless doting and companionship. He took her to travel across the mortal lands, leaving the bustling capital behind. They traversed rolling green mountains, wide rushing rivers, quiet rural villages, and vast wilderness meadows. He wanted to show her all the most beautiful scenery in the mortal world, to let her short mortal life be filled with endless splendor and warmth, to leave her with no regrets before her final departure. On the mountain peaks at dawn, they watched the first ray of golden sunlight break through the sea of clouds, dyeing the entire sky brilliant and warm. By the river at sunset, they watched the crimson sunset sink into the water, painting the waves in gorgeous fiery hues. In the quiet countryside, they listened to the chirp of crickets and the croak of frogs, breathing in the fresh, earthy fragrance of rural fields, away from all mortal vanity and noise. Lerei knew her body was fading. She could feel the vitality slipping away from her bit by bit, feel the invisible chains of fate tightening around her soul. Yet she never complained, never grieved, never showed a trace of negative emotion in front of Alaston. She cherished every second of their companionship more fervently than ever. She would hold his hand tightly whenever they walked, lean on his side whenever they rested, stare at his face for a long time, when he was asleep, silently engraving every detail of his brows, eyes, and smile into her fading soul. She knew she would have no afterlife, no reincarnation, no chance to meet him again. This life, this encounter, this 3-year love was the only and entire fortune of her 1,000 years of solitude. One quiet night, as they lay side by side in the inn's soft bed, after a day of traveling, Lerei suddenly spoke softly in the dim candlelight. "Aliston," she whispered, her voice soft and faint like floating catkins, "have you ever regretted saving me that night?" Aliston turned to hold her tightly in his arms, his heart aching violently, his voice steady and firm without a single moment of hesitation. "Never. Not for a single second. If I had known the ending would be separation and annihilation, I would still choose to save you. I would still choose to fall in love with you. Meeting you is the greatest luck of my life, even if it is only a 3-year dream." Lerei's eyes filled with warm tears, soaking his chest lightly. "But I make you suffer. You have to watch me fade away slowly, have to bear endless longing alone for the rest of your mortal life. I leave you with nothing but memories and pain." Aliston lowered his head to kiss away her tears, his lips warm and gentle against her wet cheeks, his tone hoarse and devout. "Memories are enough. Even if you leave, the warmth you gave me will accompany me for the rest of my days. Having loved you is far better than never having met you at all." The candle flame flickered softly in the night, casting gentle, swaying shadows on the walls. The two held each other tightly in the quiet darkness, clinging to the fleeting warmth of their doomed love, silently counting the dwindling days of their mortal dream. Time never stopped for anyone's love or sorrow. The 2nd year passed quietly, and the 3rd and final year arrived without warning. The moment the 3rd year began, Lerei's physical decline accelerated rapidly. Her fair skin gradually lost its mortal ruddy warmth, turning faintly pale and translucent, recovering a trace of the deep sea's icy coldness. Her energy faded drastically, and she could no longer walk for long distances or travel far. Most of her days were spent quietly resting in the courtyard of their mansion, sitting alone in the sun, watching the flowers bloom and fade, the clouds drift and disperse, quietly waiting for the final arrival of her fate. Aliston abandoned all his noble duties, rejected all banquets and social gatherings, and stayed by her side every single day without leaving. He personally took care of her daily life, prepared her favorite meals and desserts, accompanied her to watch the sunrise and sunset, chatted with her about the trivial happy days they had spent together, trying his best to fill her last days with warmth and joy. He never spoke of separation, never mentioned the upcoming ending, never let a trace of despair show on his face. He smiled and accompanied her every day, just as they had spent the past 2 years, as if their peaceful days would last forever. Lerei also cooperated with his tenderness, smiling gently every day, chatting with him softly, recalling every beautiful moment of their encounter and companionship, never mentioning the fading vitality in her body, never revealing the fear hidden deep in her heart. They both knew the ending was approaching, yet they chose to spend the final days peacefully and tenderly, cherishing every last second of their hard-won mortal love. The flowers in the courtyard bloomed for the 3rd time since Lerei came to the mortal world. The spring breeze was still soft, the summer stars still bright, the autumn leaves still gorgeous, the winter snow still pure. All mortal scenery remained the same, yet their time together was coming to an end. On the last full moon night of the 3 years, the night sky was spotlessly clean, the bright full moon hanging high in the sky, spilling cold silver light over the entire mansion courtyard, just like the night they first met 3 years ago on the misty seashore. The wind was quiet, the waves far away, the world silent. Lerei leaned quietly in Aliston's arms, her breathing soft and faint, her eyes still clear and gentle, staring fixedly at the man she had loved with her entire life and fate. "Aliston," she whispered softly, her voice thinner and lighter than ever, "I am very happy these 3 years. I have seen mortal fireworks, felt mortal warmth, possessed mortal love. I have no regrets in this life." Aliston held her trembling body tightly, his chest heaving violently, endless suppressed tears and sorrow surging in his heart, yet he forced a gentle smile on his face, his voice hoarse and trembling. I know. I am also very happy. Lerei, thank you for coming to my world, for loving me without reservation, for giving me the most perfect 3 years in my life. Under the full moon, Lerei raised her hand with her last remaining strength, gently touching his brows, his eyes, his lips, engraving his appearance into her dissipating soul. I love you, she said softly, the 3 simplest and most devout words in the world, the final confession of a mermaid who abandoned eternity for mortal love. Her hand slowly dropped, her bright eyes gradually closed, the last trace of vitality fading from her face. Her body turned translucent little by little under the moonlight, dissolving into fine, luminous dust, just as the deep-sea curse had foretold, rootless, soulless, no afterlife, no reincarnation, vanishing utterly from the mortal world. No wind, no sound, no trace of departure. The girl who had spent 3 tender mortal years with him, who had defied the deep sea and abandoned eternity for him, disappeared completely in the quiet full moon night, leaving nothing but endless moonlight and lingering warmth in the empty courtyard. Aliston knelt alone on the cold stone ground, stretching out his empty hands, holding only the cold night wind and scattered moonlight in his palms. The endless sorrow that he had suppressed for 3 years finally collapsed completely, silent tears sliding down his cheeks, dripping onto the cold ground, unable to wake the person who had loved him most. The mortal dream was over. The mermaid's eternal loneliness returned to him, doubled and endless.